How long did it take you to master the double nostril recorder?
A few hours a day for a few weeks, wasn't it? 'Cause I haven't got a job.
No?
No, because I've got lots of time.
Use it wisely.
Having now shot 2 American-backed movies in England, a big difference is the presence of money.
What's Cornwall's biggest industry?
Inbreeding, racism, mullets,
Pasties?
Clotted cream.
You know, you and Jack on the diving board doing the dance.
So there was a question mark hanging over whether I was going to be able to do it at all.
Welcome to Ross Perspective. In this video, I speak with the incredibly talented actor Ethan Lawrence, star of Afterlife, Bad Education, Horrible Histories, and many more. We discuss his journey into television, working on movies, and the uniquely strange experience of filming nude scenes.
How did you get into acting?
When I started secondary school, I started studying drama as part of the curriculum, as opposed to how it was in primary school, which was not. And I found that I'd sort of had a kind of natural aptitude for it, I suppose. So that sort of started like the process where I was like, okay, here we go. Now I've got a thing that I'm good at. So then from there, I was in like a bunch of school shows. I started doing like theatre outside of the school, like amateur stuff. Like, I wasn't like at the West End or nothing. But like, so started doing shows all around there. That was good. That was good fun. I really enjoyed that. Basically, put every second of my waking life into it. Then I started university and did drama and creative writing at Royal Holloway. And while I was doing that, I got a call to go for an audition for what at the time was called a BBC Three thing. That's all I knew about it. So I rock up and the audition. Didn't really think anything of it. Like, obviously I didn't like phone it in or nothing, but like, I did my best. And then I got a recall, and it was like, okay, well, the writer wants to meet you. And I go in, there's Jack Whitehall, and it's like, oh Christ, okay. This would have been 2012, by the way, for people who are keeping track of the chronology. I'm very old. Then did the recall, and then they offered me the part. And that ended up being Bad Education. So there you go. You got your 2-part answer there. You've got the all the amateur stuff, and then the professional bit.
I was going to talk about that. So, like, obviously, you did like the kind of reunion episode where everyone came back. What was that like, doing that again?
It was kind of weird. So first off, there was a question mark hanging over whether I was going to be able to do it at all initially, because I'd already signed a contract to do Horrible Histories. So I was tied into that from August through to December of last year, which was, that's a long time. And Horrible Histories, when it comes to a lot of acting jobs, you're not necessarily required to be in every single day. Like, by and large, you'll come in, do your stuff, and then there may be a couple of days off here, a couple of days off there. Horrible Histories is all the time. Like, we did 2 series back to back. We were shooting 24 episodes. There's only 8 of us in the main cast, so you're going to be in at least 1 sketch a day, usually 3 or 4. So there really wasn't any time. But fortunately, thanks to some excellent negotiation on behalf of my agent and the producers of both shows, I was able to squirrel away 3 days to shoot the Bad Ed reunion, which was kind of weird. Like, by and large, like when you've finished playing a part, you sort of, not so much that you sort of write it off, but you think to yourself, right, well, I don't need to do that anymore. I'll just forget all of that. And so, like, I hadn't played Joe since, God, it would have been early 2015. And then sort of here we are at like the tail end of 2022, and I'm like, right, what was he like? What were his tics? I can't remember. But I think we did all right. I mean, it was hard to focus because, again, with the Horrible Histories going on at the same time, this was all sort of compounding. And I was like, right, I'll do my best. I mean, I can't speak to if it was any good. Like if I found a job again, I feel like I did, and no one whinged, so that's fine. But yeah, it was a strange experience having to sort of find that person again. But yeah, it was good. It was good fun. I'm glad that we got the chance to do it despite the admin difficulties.
Yeah, I was going to ask like about finding a character, that you haven't played in a while. Like, was it kind of difficult, or like, did you have, like you said, what were his like tics? Like, did you have any techniques to get back into that?
Well, I'm a bit of a hack and a fraud, so I don't place much stall by sort of like, you know, the artistry of acting or whatever it is. Basically, all my characters are essentially a variation of me, but usually with some kind of extra thing on top. Because I mean, I that sort of came through from like in my improv background, like, you know, quickly coming up with a character like that. And so like for Joe, like all I needed to remember was just right. So he does that thing where he's got all like deer in the headlight eyes. He does that. He's slightly higher pitched than I am normally. I remember that. And so then once I did that, I was like, right, okay, well, I found him again. There he is. I think because we were doing the reunion and, like, you know, in fiction, 10 years had passed. I felt okay with like maybe giving him a bit more of an edge than he had before. And so like there was a particular scene that's sort of one of the early scenes where we bump into Chantel and Grayson for the first time. And Mitchell sort of gives him a one-liner. I can't remember what it was now, but it gives him a one-liner, and I improv just going no, which is something that Joe never would have done before. But yeah, I feel, you know, 10 years is enough time for him to have grown a backbone.
Hospice late husband left her quite a lot of money in his will. Well, Joe's got a sugar granny. No.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I guess all the characters would have changed slightly, like, over that time period.
And again, like, no one told me not to, so I'm assuming it was fine.
Was there a lot of like improvisation on? I get, well, not just Bad Education, but like in, you know, things like Afterlife as well. Is there quite a lot of improvisation on that?
It varies from job to job. Early Bad Education, especially, there wasn't a huge amount of room for improv because it was quite tightly scripted already. So and especially like, so again, sort of worth thinking sort of about these sort of like the economics and like of time and scale. So if you're shooting a classroom scene for Bad Education, on screen, that's going to be about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. In reality, you got to think of all the different camera setups. You need a wide from the back. You need a wide from the front. You need 2 shots for every table with a speaking character on it. You need a mid of Jack, a close of Jack, and then a close of everyone, picking everyone off. So like, it could be like upwards of 15 shots per scene, which is like a lot. And so like when you're up against that sort of time pressure, there's not really much time to mess about, you know. On the other hand, Afterlife was 90% improv. I will never forget when we were doing series 3 and the scene at the fair when James gets it from Ratty and the Nonce. I will never forget this, how this was scripted. There's a brief conversation between me and Brian Gittins, who's in the stocks, and then the script literally read, Ratty and the Nonce enter, they abuse James.
Not being a dickhead, Elf. What'd you come as?
Jester?
Well, like a fucking molester.
Just a molester.
Fucking Santa's little cunt.
Leave him alone, mate.
There was no dialogue written. There was nothing there. It was just like, right, we're just gonna let them go. And whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Is that the same? Because I spoke to Doc Brown, who's in Derek, and he said when it's a show from Ricky Gervais, that a lot of the scenes are kind of like that, where it's like it's not fully scripted. It's more like this character needs to do this, and kind of just give it a go.
I think Afterlife was a little more tightly scripted than some of the other stuff, but only because like in this especially, like not to say it didn't happen in Derek, but like with Afterlife especially, you really had to be careful of skirting that line between comedy and drama, because it was very. You're always sort of running a risk when you're doing such high comedy against such high drama. So there were points where that was the case, like especially any scene involving Brian Gittins. There's no point scripting anything for David Earl because he'll learn it and he'll do it, but then he'll add something. Because he's a magnificent man. So yeah, I think it was, by Ricky Gervais's standards, probably more scripted than some of his previous projects, but there was still a lot of room with it. I mean, some of the scenes like were basically skeletal, and like, you know, you've got your basic through line, but like how you get there is going to be down to sort of the individual quirks of the actors playing it.
On shows like that, like you said, where it just said like they abuse James, how do you like stop yourself from breaking? Because I imagine that would happen quite a lot with scenes like that where you don't even know what's coming.
Okay, so two-part answer to that. Part one, my innate sense of professionalism. I comport myself with great dignity, honor, and grace, and like, you know, I'm being paid to do a job, and by golly, I will get that job done. Second part of the answer: if you've ever watched any of the outtakes for Afterlife, you will know that I didn't do that. And essentially, the completed scene is sort of cobbled together in the edit, based around, you know, bits where at least one of us wasn't laughing, so that we can have a nice little reaction shot.
He was a big man. I enjoyed having him in the house. What are you thinking?
I don't know what to think, bro. Heartbreaking, like you said.
Let's watch the chase.
It's very tricky. Like normally I'm pretty good with that sort of stuff, but there was a certain sort of energy in the air when we were shooting Afterlife. That sort of like, you know, the sense of play and the sense of like no rules, as it were, which meant that you sort of had the old comedy trope of having permission to laugh. And in this case, it sort of felt like we were fine. Like, we'd get it eventually, but like, in addition, there wasn't sort of like a dictatorial tyrant king sitting at the top going, "Come on, we have to get this." Because again, if you've watched the outtakes, Ricky's a bugger for cracking, even if he's not in the scene. So if Boss Man's laughing, then that makes it fine for everyone else.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I guess that, yeah, like that'll come through on screen as well if everyone's like having a good time during the comedic scenes. Definitely.
I like to think so. I mean, there's a certain sort of voodoo of production that, like, I do feel you can sometimes see when you're watching something if it was a happy or a difficult shoot. Not all the time, but sometimes there's just no way of hiding it.
With Afterlife, it's quite I guess the subject matter is really serious, but it's still funny, and like you said, it's kind of walking that line between comedy and drama. Do you have any sort of techniques to kind of switch your character from more of a comedic side to a serious side? If that makes any sense at all.
I mean, usually it'll come on sort of like a scene by scene basis. Again, I'm deeply suspicious of method actors, like, you know, the ones who like can't switch off when the camera stops, because I'm like, okay, well, you're not being paid to be, you're being paid to act. Come on, let's just stop taking this. I mean, poor old what's his pops who played Elvis, who's experienced, from what I understand, is complete ego death, and he's just Elvis now. and he didn't even win the Oscar. How's that fair? But in terms of sort of technique, I really don't have any. Like, it's just sort of, you feel it when you're sort of going into it. But like, you can turn it. Well, I can, but I don't know how others have. But like, I can turn it on and off like a tap. Like, you know, I'll be joking around with the crew and everything like that, and then like the camera's being set up, and then it's like, okay, ready to go, and then action, and boom, I'm there a minute, and then cut, and then I'm out again. We can all have a cup of tea and a giggle. I think that just makes it a lot easier, to be honest with you. Again, it's tricky because like I very much appreciate the question and what you're asking me, but by the same token, I'm sort of like, I don't know. You just do it.
I guess that means you're a good actor then.
Well, I don't know about that. Again, I described myself quite early as a hack and a fraud. I think I've just been basically getting away with it for the last 11 years, being just good enough not to get fired.
With like comedies, and particularly like Bad Education and Afterlife, there's a lot of like awkward scenes. So like there's, you know, you and Jack on the diving board doing the dance.
Just follow me, follow you. I don't mind, I'm looking for a yes, not maybe. Put your hands up.
And there's also like the scene in Afterlife where like you're in the bath and everyone's just like watching you and you're trying to get them out.
Please. 2 scenes in the bath.
2 scenes, oh yeah.
It's in the bath, but come in.
What?
Robbie?
Mum,
What, love?
I'm having a bath.
Good boy.
Bloody steamy in here, isn't it?
Yeah, I told him he has it too hot. Bad for his testicles. Makes you sterile.
Do you mind? Yeah, they do look red, mate.
I've got to get my own place.
Let's sell it short. I was naked for a lot of that series.
How do you film those? Because I imagine that's like obviously really funny, but then it must also be really awkward with like, you know, all the cameras and the crew around.
Well, it was particularly so when we were shooting those bath scenes because the first one in particular was shot in an actual like residential house bathroom. Which, like, you know, for having a bath and having 2 people in there, which is what you see on the screen, that is a reasonable size. That is fine. But what you're not seeing is the 2 cameramen, the camera techs, the sound guys. So, you know, already we're up to, I think maybe 7 or 8 people in a normal bathroom. Bear in mind, like, this is not like expanded on a set or anything. So it's a pretty tight squeeze. But when it comes to those sorts of scenes, I think by and large, most people who have been working in TV for any length of time have seen all this before. Like, you know, even if it's not comedy, like, you know, in dramas, like especially nowadays, like there's always someone walking around with their tackle out or whatever. So, like, you know, people are sort of generally used to it, I think, these days. It doesn't make it any less awkward, but I found, because for some reason, I don't know what it is. I know exactly what it is. Say, I've had to, like, take my top off, get my bum out. Like, I've had to do this, like, frankly, what I consider to be an anomalous amount of times in my career. I feel like it's just me. I feel like I'm being really, really focused on for this. And I find the best thing to do is when it's happening, just be sort of like, right, okay, well, come on, lads. Like, you know, we're all trying to. None of us want this to last any longer than it has to. So let's all buckle down. Let's get this thing shot. I remember first job back after COVID was a show called Murder They Hope for UK TV Gold with Johnny Vegas and Sean Gibson, which featured one of my patented "get my bum out" shots. Because the sort of the conceit of it was that I'd been making sweet love to someone who had then gone somewhere else, and then I'm invaded by Johnny Vegas and Sean Gibson, and I stand up, and the reveal is from behind. He's like, "Oh, we can see his bum," therefore implied that they can see his willy. And then there's a very funny bit where I'm shot from the waist up. You know, this is UK TV Gold. It's going out at 9. There'll be no. This is supposed to be a comedy, not like some kind of horrifying sex thing. But the joke of it then is that you see me and I'm like, oh, there's people. Whatever shall I do? And near me are some donuts, and then I put a donut to sort of hide it, and then a second donut, and then a third. And it's like, okay, I appreciate that was nice, but like the actual mechanics of shooting that to get the sort of like what I'm going to now call, and for want of a better term, because I do not want to call it this, but the money shot. is you got a shot of me from the front, sort of standing up, and then you cut to behind me, and like cameras at butt level. So you've got half of the screen is my ass, and on the other side is an appropriate reaction shot from Johnny Vegas and Sean Gibson. But what that actually entailed was the first assistant director is standing just off to my left, off camera, and he's got the back of my shirt. He's just pinched sort of the lower part of my shirt. And he's just lifting that up just a little bit, so that you can really see the rounded glory of it, the absolute ass of it all. And again, when you're in those sorts of situations, and the camera's, and I'm not being funny, the camera's there. It's like it's directly behind you, and you know it's pointing straight up it, and you're like, and so again, your only sort of recourse is to be like, all right, let's get this shot, guys, because I'd quite like to put my pants back on. I mean, I haven't even got to what they did to hide my shame. Yeah, okay, we'll get on to this as well since we're here. So it's called a modesty pouch, right? So it's how best to describe it? You know, like an old medieval coin purse.
Yeah.
It's that, but with like a longer drawstring that ties all the way around your waist. And basically, you tuck your gentleman and his 2 kids in the into that, and then you sort of have to kind of sort of pull it taut, but in a way that isn't going to like execute you. And that is what they call on the set modesty. It's like, no, all that I've done is put my shame inside a little pouch as if I'm like displaying it. And it's like, no, I'm really not. And of course everyone else is clothed. Never done a job where, like, you know, in solidarity everyone else gets their bums out. Nah, just old Ethan. He'll be fine with it. Of course he will. Not that I'm complaining, you know, I do it for the money.
Do you know if it's as like awkward for your co-stars, or do they like find it funny? Or
again, in this case, I think it was sort of like I think they felt sorry for me ultimately.
Oh, no.
Because it's sort of like, oh yeah, when we were bouncing this idea around in the writers' room, we didn't really think about sort of the turgid reality of it, which is it's December, we're in a disused bread factory, it's cold. And here's a person who we've spoken to and we've become friendly with and like we've shared some scenes with, and now he's here and his penis and 2 testicles are in a little pouch, and the first assistant director is holding up his shirt just to make sure we get a nice good shot of his bum, and suddenly it doesn't seem that funny anymore.
Just to kind of take it back to Bad Education, because I'm quite intrigued to know, like, so obviously did the movie as well. From an audience point of view, you can see there's like a bigger budget and, you know, locations and things like that. But are there any kind of big differences that go on behind the scenes when you're shooting a movie based on a TV show?
With that, no. In this case, like, the director of the movie was also the director of the second series. Chap called Elliot Hegarty, brilliant director. If you've seen any Modern Family, you've seen his work. He's very, very good. But on account of that, he knew sort of like the rhythm and structure of how Bad Education operates. And so in terms of sort of like the day-to-day shooting, it was basically like shooting the TV show, except we were in Cornwall and Wales for a bit. And like, you know, occasionally there were some slightly bigger stunts, but I mean, it's not like even in the TV show we sort of scrimped on like big set pieces. Like, you know, we were used to doing them, and it was all sort of fine. But yeah, sort of in terms of sort of like the internal structure and the internal dynamics, it was by and large the creative team were the same. Actors in the main were the same, with just the occasional guest spots of people coming in who knew what they were doing anyway. And so it wasn't, it didn't really feel appreciably different. You know, having now subsequently done movies that were movies as opposed to adaptations of TV shows. There is a significant difference. But in this case, it wasn't. It was essentially us shooting a 90-minute episode.
What are the big differences between like you said, like a Hollywood movie and an adaptation of a TV show?
So again, it's sort of the tricky thing is sort of like comparing it to it's apple and oranges for sure, but like with Bad Education specifically, we sort of knew what we were getting going into shooting the movie because we'd already spent 3 years at the coalface of the TV show. Every set is different. Like, there's no like hard and fast rule for how things are. But having now shot 2 American-backed movies in England, I'd say a big difference is the presence of money, craft services and such. But like I don't know anything about like directing for camera, but I get the impression that it's again a sort of a completely different skill set. And that's not to say that there's no overlap. I'm not saying that someone who directs TV can't direct films, because we've seen that happen, and vice versa. But like with a bigger canvas to paint on, I feel like film directors sort of have a kind of an artistic obligation to try and paint with broader colors as opposed to sort of like a kind of economy of TV. Because generally, like if you're shooting, it would be a sort of similar length of shoot, but when you're shooting for TV, you're making 6 half-hour episodes that equal up to 3 hours of content. But that's like post-edit, so there'll be more. But with a film, you're generally shooting for 90 minutes to 2 hours, and you'll be creating the same amount of content in the same amount of time. So you've got more room to, like, go for bigger ideas and things like that. So, for example, Magic Mike's The Last Dance. We were in the Clapham Grand Theatre in London for weeks, like shooting all of this excellent choreography from the boys, and like all this brilliant like crowd reaction stuff and everything going on, and like the sort of the main show element of that film like took, I think, a week and a half to 2 weeks to get that all nailed down. When like, and that's what, like 20 minutes of the film, and like in that time, in 2 weeks, you could feasibly have shot 2 episodes of Bad Education. So I think that's where the difference is. It's just sort of like painting with brighter colors and a broader brush, because you don't have the similar like time pressures that you'd have working for TV.
Back to Magic Mike though. So, how did the role of Woody come about?
No, this was a weird one. So I had I'd auditioned for a West End show that I won't name in early January, having just come off January 2022. This would have been having come off a bout of COVID. And I got pretty close, like final 2 close. And eventually it went the other way. But in the same phone call when my agent told me that, he said, bit of weird news though. Soderbergh's been on the blur. And I'm like, Soderbergh as in Steven Ocean's 11 Contagion Soderbergh. And he's like, yeah. You've heard of Magic Mike, haven't you? And I'm like, get to the point, Michael! And essentially the point was it was offer only. The producers and Stephen had seen my work in Afterlife and had decided then rather it be a 50-year-old man, as in the reality of the early live Magic Mike shows, they instead wanted to plump for a late 20s rolling disaster. He gets his bum out for money. And so they basically offered it with no audition, which has now happened twice in my career, which suggests that I'm onto something. It's broadly speaking, that is a good thing to be happening. So yeah, that was very exciting, and like certainly really helped me recover from the deflation of not getting the West End gig. But what can I say? Theatre's loss was Hollywood's gain.
Yeah, there you go.
Although some would argue that theatre's loss was Hollywood's loss also.
This is kind of a broad one, but if you can decide, I guess, what would be your favorite line or your favorite scene that you've ever filmed?
So there are moments in my career that certainly have stuck in the memory more than others, because like I've done, you know, I've across bad education, I've done countless classroom scenes, and I couldn't tell you one line from them. Not because they were in any way bad. It's just that it was, you know, 7 to 10 years ago since I did them, and we did a lot of them. So really, you're sort of looking for something that was sort of kind of outstanding in a way that sort of the world around it sort of stuck it in your memory. So the scene with the dive, for example, from Bad Ed Series 2 that we mentioned before, and I demonetized your channel over, sticks in the memory because that was just such a... The situation surrounding that was that it was the last thing we had to shoot. It was the very, very, very last scene of the 7-week shoot. And so we had to get it right first time because it was the end of the day, and camera B operator Ali's wife was literally in labor at the time we were shooting it. So it was like, we have to get this first time because otherwise Jack's wig will be messed up and Ethan's actual hair will need to be redone. So we got to get this. Principally because we don't have time to reshoot it, and also Ali's about to become a father again, and it would be nice for him to go to the hospital and be with his wife as opposed to here shooting this. So that's got nice memories attached to it. Panicked memories, but nice memories. There was being set on fire in the Bad Education movie. That was good. The bath scenes for Afterlife were a lot of fun. Actually performing on the stage like as Elton John, that was a laugh. I think there's some of the stuff that I've done recently, not to be all, ooh, look at him, what's he talking about? But some of the stuff I did on Horrible Histories, and most recently on the film show that I just finished called Boat Story, I think contains some of my finest work I've done in the 11 years of doing this. But, you know, time will tell, we'll see. I think if I was forced to pick one, it would be Doc Martin, where I was on the top of a sea wall threatening to throw myself off. So it's in this beautiful Port Isaac in Cornwall. But we're out on this sea wall, and again, what is it about time pressure that seems to make me really enjoy shooting stuff? But in this case, the time pressure was the literal tide. We had like maybe 3 hours to shoot this before the area where we were shooting would be fully underwater, with no way of us being able to get back. But it was really exciting because I was up there and like I had all ropes and everything to make sure I didn't fall down. And like part of it was shot on a drone, which I'd never done before. So like there's this drone flying around, and there's Martin Clunes, and like they're all climbing up. I'm shouting, I'm doing some of my good acting, and and like, you know, all this stuff. And because I was facing out, I can physically see the tide, and basically work out how much longer we've got before we have to abandon this scene and return to shore. So yeah, that sticks in my mind because of the time pressure, which I seem to be an absolute addict for. And just sort of the general drama of the whole thing, like, you know, being in Cornwall and Martin Clunes and a drone, like it was mad.